How's it going? Ryan here at etrailer.com. Today on our 2018 GMC Sierra 1500, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the Air Lift Loadlifter 5000 air helper springs for the rear axle. Now before we put our airbags on, what we're going to do is take a measurement to find our factory ride height without any weight in the bed of the truck. If you measure here at the front from the ground to the edge of our wheel well, it's going to be about 40.5 inches. And here at the back, from the ground to the wheel well, we're going to be right at 41 inches. So now I went ahead and put a significant amount of weight in the bed of our truck, and now we can take those same measurements. Here at the front, from the ground to the wheel well, it's going to be about 41 inches. And here at the rear of the truck, it's going to be right at 38 inches. So since our truck is now squatting in the back, the front end is raised up a little bit, and that's going to cause a few different things all the way around. We're going to have increased tire wear, less suspension travel, so it's going to make for a rougher ride. Our headlights are going to be pointing up towards the sky instead of on the ground where we need them to be. And not to mention, our steering and braking performance is going to be diminished since our truck is not riding level. Now, as we go over our bumps on our test course, let's see how the truck responds to all this weight in the bed. And right away I can feel the ride is much more stiff, almost like our suspension is wanting to bottom out. The steering wheel's a lot looser and a little bit harder to maintain control of. Now we'll take our truck through the slalom course, do a little evasive maneuvering, and right away on the first one, I can feel that weight kind of throwing us around. The truck just doesn't feel as planted as it should. It just feels like we would lose control a lot more easily. Now with the airbags installed and that same weight in the bed of the truck, we can take our measurements and see where our truck is sitting at. And here at the front, from the ground to the wheel well, is right at 40.5 inches. And here at the back, from the ground to our wheel well, it's going to be right at 41 inches. So essentially our truck is riding at that same factory ride height as it would with no weight in the bed of the truck. That's going to increase our performance as far as our braking power goes, our handling, and just overall give us a better ride quality. And since our truck isn't riding like this anymore, our tires are going to be nice and flat on the ground, decreasing that excessive tire wear. And not to mention, our headlights are going to be pointed straight ahead on the ground as opposed to up in the sky where they're not helping us. Now we'll go ahead and run our truck through the slalom course and do some evasive maneuvering. And a major improvement right away. You can feel our truck is much more planted and stable. The steering wheel's nice and tight, and we're just not getting thrown around like we were. Now we'll go over our bumps and see how it does. Now, in my opinion, the truck's taking it like a champ. It's much more stable. It doesn't feel like we're going to bottom out. Can really hardly tell that we have any weight in the bed of the truck at all. And in my opinion, that's how it should be. Now overall, to be honest, I was a little bit skeptical that these air springs would actually help such a big and heavy duty truck. But I was pleasantly surprised once we got them on, took it on the test course, how much it actually did improve our ride. The air helper springs are going to go in place of your factory style Johns bumpers. And just to give you an idea, here's the factory Johns bumper compared to our air spring. Now the Johns bumper is really only going to prevent your truck from bottoming out, as opposed to the air spring, which is going to take up that whole space, provide support, and give you maximum adjustability for however heavy of a load you plan on carrying. The air springs themselves are going to be adjustable from 5 all the way up to 100 psi. Now that's a pretty wide threshold, so you'll be able to fine-tune the air spring to increase your ride quality. The air springs are going to have a maximum load capacity of 5,000 pounds. Now keep in mind, they're not going to add to your truck's overall weight capacity, they're just going to work in conjunction with it. Now compared to some of the other styles of suspension enhancements out there, these are going to require a little bit of maintenance because they do have a minimum air pressure that we need to keep in them. So every now and again you will have to check that. And since it is an air system, over time you could potentially develop an air leak. But in my opinion, that trade-off is well worth the adjustability and how much we're going to be able to customize our ride with this style. And to make maintenance and adjustments even easier, you can pick up a compressor to do it all from inside of the cab of your truck. And Air Lift does make a compressor that'll match perfectly with our air helper springs. To begin our installation, I went ahead and removed our spare tire just to give us a little more room to work. And what I did was took a jack, and what we're doing here is lifting the body of the vehicle up. That way it'll increase the gap in between our frame rail and our axle and give us more room to squeeze our airbag in. Now we need to begin by removing some of our wires and lines to allow enough clearance for our airbag to fit. So we'll first start with this one here, which is our ABS wire. It's going to be held in place by this little clip. So we'll pop that out of the frame rail using a trim panel tool, or a flathead screwdriver will work just fine too. We'll pop that out. Then we actually need to remove the clip from the wire itself. So on this side, there's going to be a clip that you can kind of pry in and separate those two pieces. Once we have it off, now we can set it off to the side. So now we can take one of our smaller clamps that's included with our kit, wrap that around our ABS wire, kind of just pinch it so it'll stay there. Now we can just let this hang out here for now, and we'll install it later on. We're also going to have to remove a clamp that's on our brake lines, but before we do that, make it a little easier to see, give us some more room, we're going to disconnect this loom of wiring from our frame rail. There'll be a little clip right there, and we can just kind of pop it out, as well as this one up here. And kind of pull that down out of the way. Now if we follow our brake lines up, we're going to have a clip right here that we need to take off. Again, it'll be just clipped to the frame rail, so we can kind of work our tool back up there and pop it off. Now this clip is going to have to be completely removed, and this will work kind of like the one that was on the ABS wire. We kind of just get in underneath the top of it. We're able to lift the cap off, and you can just completely remove it and set it off to the side. So now if we come to our differential, we're going to need to use a different bracket to relocate our emergency brake cable here. So before we remove that bracket, it's a lot easier to take the cable out since it's steady in place. So I'll just use a pair of pliers, kind of just bend it out a little bit and pull our cable out. Now what we can do is remove our bracket by taking out this 10mm bolt. Go ahead and pop your bracket out. We're going to be using this large clamp. I'll kind of put it up like this, clamp it down, and then we're just going to reuse that bolt that we just took out to re-secure it. Now we can remove our factory jounce bumpers. Now these are going to be held in place with one bolt up inside. So you'll take a 10mm socket and a small extension, put it in place, and we can go ahead and back that bolt up. And with that bolt out, you can just grab it with your hand, kind of work it out and set it off to the side. Now we can pre-assemble our airbag assembly. So we'll take this end of our airbag and we'll have two fittings and a third one up here that it's actually protruding out from the top of the bag a little ways. And then take our roll plate, set it down over the bag. Then we can take our airline fitting and get that started. So the way this fitting works is it's going to thread into the fitting that is protruding out a little ways. And we're going to tighten it down as tight as we can, hand tight. We're then going to use a wrench and tighten it another 1.5 turns. Just like that. You can then take our top bracket. Now these are side specific and they will be numbered or lettered on the bracket. So pay attention that you have the correct one. We'll set that down like this. We're going to take our flat bolts and get them threaded in. And for now, I'll just get these hand tight. Now when we put our lower bracket on, there's going to be an arrow on that lower bracket. We want to make sure that that is pointing away from our airline fitting. So with that being said, we can flip our bag over, take our roll plate, we'll go ahead and put that into place. We can take our lower bracket, line all of our holes up, and we can take our flat bolts and get those started. Now once all of our bolts are in place and hand tight, we can tighten and torque them down to the specifications in our instructions. Before we put our airbag assembly in place, we do need to get a piece of hardware in our frame rail. We're going to need a bolt to drop out of this hole right here. Now the way we're going to get that bolt in is using a fish wire. So we'll take the fish wire in that's coiled, feed it up through that hole. We're going to push it right out of this larger hole in the side of the frame. Now what we're going to do is take a flat washer, a large one, and one of these shorter bolts. Now this will be the bolt that has a little bit of shoulder on it. We'll put that flat washer over the bolt. We're going to thread that bolt into that coiled end. And then we're able to pull that hardware through that large opening in the frame. We're able to work it down and out. Just like that. Now once it's out, you need to carefully unthread that full wire because we're going to have to use this for the other side. So you want to be sure not to damage it. So now we're going to take our airbag assembly and put it in place. We're going to kind of have to work it around everything. Make sure not to pinch your ABS wire. And that bolt that we dropped down into the frame is going to come through this hole here in our bracket. Line that up and get it to drop through. Then we can take our ABS wire with that new clamp that we put on, slide that over the stud. Then we're going to follow that up with the flat washer and a nylon lock nut. Now we can take our U-bolt and put that in place. Now this is going to sit on top of the frame rail, so these will come down each side of it, and then the top of our airbag bracket will actually come up through the threads, and we're able to secure it. I'm going to wrap this in place. Now you want to be careful, you don't want to pinch any of the lines or anything that could be on top of the frame rail. It is a little tight fit, so you might have to work to get it into position. And we'll drop down like that. And then on each threaded portion on each side, we'll put that flat washer on and a nylon lock nut. Now we can go ahead and tighten up our U-bolt nuts evenly. So we want to run these down at the same pace on each side. And now we can torque them down to the amount specified in our instructions. Now to tighten up this bolt, what we're going to do is take a box wrench and go in through this opening in the frame rail to get onto the head of the bolt inside to hold it steady so we can tighten the nut down. Then we'll make sure to use our torque wrench to tighten that hardware down to the specification in our instructions. Now we're able to secure our lower airbag bracket to the axle. We're going to do that using these clamp brackets. So we'll take the bracket like this. We're going to take a bolt, a flat washer, run that through, and then this is actually going to kind of fit and catch this plate. And that bolt is going to run up through our lower bracket. We're going to follow that up with a flat washer and another nylon lock nut. Now get this side hand tight, and the other side is going to be set up the exact same way, so I'll do this over there too. Now we can go ahead and tighten down our clamps. Now when we tighten these down, you want to make sure to try to get them centered or even on both sides as much as we can. Once we have these tightened, we can go ahead and torque them down to the amount specified in our instructions. So now you would just repeat that same process over on the passenger side to get that airbag installed as well. And once you have both bags installed, we can focus on running our airline. Now I went ahead and cut our airline tubing in half, that way we have the same length for each side. Now whenever we make this cut that'll plug into the fitting in our airbag, you want to make sure that it's really straight, sharp, and clean. So you don't want to use a pair of your traditional style side cutters or snips. You want to use a utility knife, a razor blade, or a tool like this to give you a really clean and straight cut. So I'll go ahead and make sure that cut is 100% straight. It should look just like this. Now we can take our clean cut line and plug it into the fitting on top of the bag. This is really simple. You just push it straight in, all the way back, and then you can just lightly pull back on the line to make sure it's completely seated into the fitting. Now I'm going to run our other end of our line to the spot where I'm going to mount it, and then I can show you the path that I took to get there. Now here's how I routed my airline tubing. I just came up making a large bend here. You just want to be sure not to kink your tubing or run it next to anything that's going to be moving around or hot. I brought it up over our frame rail, up and over this electrical component here, and down, dropping it out right here. And what I did is actually drilled a couple, or one hole rather, on each side, kind of on the side by where our license plate lights are, and I'm going to run this out through there so we can easily air everything up. Before we put this through the hole that we drilled, we do need to put some hardware on it. So we're going to take a nut, thread that all the way down, and then we're going to grab our star washer, put that on, and then we're able to push our Schrader valve through that hole that we drilled. Here's where our Schrader valve came out. And so the hardware that we're going to put on this side is the rubber washer. We're going to take a flat washer, and finally a nut. And we can go ahead and tighten it all down. And for the passenger side, it's very similar, except I routed our tubing towards the front right away to keep it away as much as we can from our exhaust. And before you plug it in, they do include a little piece of sleeve, and you're going to want to put that on the area on your tube that's closest to the exhaust, and that'll just help protect it from any heat. So I zip tied it up here, and then I started to make that turn and route it towards the back of the truck. I went up and on top of our frame rail, along through here, and I was able to do the same thing with our fitting into our license plate. Now we can go ahead and fill our bags up with air. That way we can check for any leaks. To check our airbags for leaks, we're going to come to all of the fittings and spray them down with some soapy water. Now what we're looking for is any bubbles to be consistently forming, and if those bubbles are forming, that means we have a leak there. We need to pull our line out, recut a straight edge, connect it, and check it again. Now that we verify there's no leaks in our system, we're all good to go. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Air Lift Loadlifter 5000 air helper springs on our 2018 GMC Sierra 1500.